Hello, I'm John Morrison, owner of Cornerstone Glassworks. One thing I would like to demonstrate today is a type of edge treatment that you can perform on heavy plate glass. It'll work on any thickness, but it seems to be more effective on thick glass like 3/8, half, or 3/4. In fact, the thicker the glass is, the more dynamic this look is. Instead of creating an edge where you're specifically carving and shaping with a specific intent, the idea here is to use a couple of techniques that are more organic, where you sort of just make nature happen. And so we're going to experiment on some 3/4 inch thick glass. We're going to do a little hammering or flinting, and we're going to do a little grousing. So anyway, let's set that up and get going. Okay, I've got this piece of scrap 3/4 inch thick glass. We're going to cut a piece off of it, and then we're going to work off of two edges of that glass. So let's just go ahead and cut this in half. Okay, there we go. Get rid of this one. Okay, now the two edges we're going to work on are these clean cut edges. You could work off of a polished edge, but might as well keep the polished edges to have a nice finished sample. Now, what we're going to do first is grouse one of these edges. Now I've got a pair of grousing pliers here. This is actually a regular pair, the way they come. Sometimes when you're working on this, you actually scratch the bottom of the glass. However, in instances where you're going to be frosting or carving the bottom side, you don't need to use these. I took another pair and put a block of neoprene rubber on it, and that protects the bottom from scratching while I'm working on it. Once we're done with that side, we're going to do some clamming, some hammering on the edge using this brass disc hammer that I put together, and then we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to set that up right now. Okay, I've got this piece of glass clamped to the table because I need it to be fixed firmly. Most of the time, my projects are big enough that I don't need a clamp. The sheer weight of the tabletop or divider panel holds the glass steady for me. Now, I can make any kind of line I want, more or less, and then I can grouse to that line and follow it. I'm going to put this box down here to catch the droppings so that I don't have to do so much sweeping when I'm done. Okay, so we're going to start by taking these bites. Just keep working. Grab a brush. I like to brush off the powder as I'm going so I can see my line better. Okay, you see how I can keep working in towards the line that I've drawn for myself. Now, if you do this all day, your forearms will be spent the next morning. Okay, now I wind up with a lot of these little points which sometimes I want to keep those, even though they're going to get sandblasted so they're not razor sharp. But for a tabletop in somebody's home, I don't want something quite that pointy. So we'll just roll the pliers on those points, and I don't have to spend the time to sandblast all that off when we're sandblasting it. Now, what you've got here is a nice organic edge. And you see there's a texture here. There's also a lot of loose glass still attached. So what we need to do is sandblast that off. So we'll mask off both sides of the glass, and then we'll sandblast to knock out the loose pieces and to frost everything up nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flip it around, clamp it back down. Now we're going to hammer on that edge. This is a little more dangerous, meaning you might lose your glass. I would really recommend, before starting on a project using this technique, to get a bunch of scrap glass and just tear it up. Just get in there until you start to get the feel for it, because there is a real touch. Okay, that'll get us there. So anyway, now we've got this organic edge where nature is sort of doing the work. You're just kind of helping it along. So what we're going to do is mask off both sides, sandblast the edges, and see what that looks like. Okay, now that we've got both edges treated, we're going to apply some vinyl resist to both sides. So we need to clean it so it'll stick. This vinyl is a piece of scrap from something I already cut, so you can see it's got a little open spot there. We'll get rid of that. Okay, now what I want to do is cut along the edge. So I use a carpenter's crayon to show me where the very edge is. And what I want to do, I don't want to cut along the edge. I want to cut just in, either a 16th or an 8th, because I want to have the very edge exposed so that when I go to sandblast, it treats that potentially sharp edge. So you see here I'm cutting about a 16th or so away from the edge. And you can accentuate that. You can give it a little more contour and make the edges sharp. I tend to just follow along very sloppily. But if you go off the edge by accident, go back and cut in a little bit. Now, you can see that this edge here that is raw is exposed. Now we're going to do the same thing over here. There I went off the edge a little bit, so I'm going to go back and cut in just a tad. Okay. There we go. Now we've got that done. Now we're going to flip it over, do the exact same thing to the second side. Clean it first. Careful not to cut yourself. I assume if you're watching this video, you've cut yourself enough times, you don't do it anymore. Well,
I'm having trouble getting the resist off. There we go. Take that down. Now I'm going to do the same thing, do it on the other side. Show myself where the edge is. Then I'm going to cut about a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge. Sometimes you're doing this and you can do these little viney things or something, anything to enhance the design. Okay, and once again, the very edge, if I see there's not edge exposed, I cut back. I go ahead and dress it up a little bit. Nice thing about this kind of work is it's not real precise, it's organic, so you can just kind of do it freehand, whereas other things you have to be a little more slow, a lot more specific. So there we go. Now we've got both sides masked off and ready to sandblast. And one of the objectives in the sandblasting is A, take off the sharp edges, but anything that's loose, anything that's not part of the single piece of glass needs to be sandblasted off. Now a lot of times you can tell this when you go in and start sandblasting. You'll see a different coloration underneath a clam like this right here in the booth will show up once I've frosted it. But I need to keep shooting that until it flies off and it's gone. And that's the same thing here. I need all of this little loose stuff to be gone. Anything that can come off is a potential issue, health hazard for a client. So, got to be very thorough and got to pay attention.
Okay, here I want to take a close-up look at this edge work before we go to sandblast it, to let you see some of what I'm concerned with when I talk about knocking out loose pieces of glass. So like here's some loose stuff right here, a couple of clams right here that are ready to let go but they're not quite released yet. Here's some more ground area. Okay, on the groused edge it's a little easier to see some of the loose junk that needs to come off. All those areas that are white in color, that's loose glass. Like right here, here, etc. Right there. And of course there's little bits and pieces here and here. They're all around. And once you start blasting, they'll show up even better and you can target them for elimination.
Okay, now that we've frosted the glass, we're going to remove the vinyl resist. Comes off real easy. And here you've got half an idea of what we wound up with. A very nice organic edge without having to go in and physically carve and sculpt and create it. Now on the hammered side, we get this kind of neat, cool look to it. Now these edges, there's no sharp areas on them at all. If I did my job right, you have to pay attention and watch what you're doing. You don't want to hand a customer anything sharp or potentially sharp. This is the groused edge. And then let's look again at the hammered edge. This is from the smooth side. And this is from my favorite side of the hammered edge. If you sandblast out every loose piece of glass, it won't break, it won't cut, and chips won't fall out. So, that's pretty cool. Okay, well there you have it. 2 edge treatments on heavy plate that you can use on various projects. One note, if you plan on tempering your glass after doing these edge treatments, do not. It will explode in the furnace. The furnace does not like the irregular edge. And if the glass is already tempered, well then you don't want to carve it or grouse it or hammer it anyway. Anyway, that's just a couple of things I enjoy doing. My next video, I want to focus on what I call liquid resist. Instead of using sheets of vinyl resist or sheets of rubber resist or photoresist, rather there are various liquids that can be used to create interesting textures in glass. So anyway, we'll do that next time. If you have any questions, please write. I will respond.